Hello and welcome to the Print Soft Cover. We have with us senior journalist and author Rajdeep Sardesai, and we will be talking to him about his book 2024, The Election That Surprised India. So, welcome to the Print, Mr. Sardesai. Without much ado, let's begin. Um, Elections, you say, are turned into candy shops, if I'm not mistaken, where suddenly you say you are showered with all kind of goodies in the backdrop of the freebies culture, especially, we saw that in Haryana, we saw that in Maharashtra, before that in Madhya Pradesh elections. How do you think this culture is going to shape Indian politics and elections?
First of all, thank you very much, ma'am, for having me here on the print. It's an outstanding website, and all congratulations to you and the entire team led by Shekhar Gupta. So it's great to be here. Uh, I referred to the goodies and the candy bar in a lecture I delivered the other day on the 10 big changes I've seen between 1989, when I first covered a Lok Sabha election, and 2024. It's not as if promises were not made by politicians in 1989, but the manner in which they are made now, the directness of the offering, if I may call it that, is much more evident now than ever before. It's not just in terms of cash transfers, it's in terms of direct benefits. It started in Tamil Nadu, some would say about 20 years ago, but it's picked up pace to the point where it is a bit of a candy shop at election time. My sense is that we've fallen into a bit of a trap as a political as the political class has, because when you can't build good schools, when you can't build good hospitals, when you can't actually provide productive employment, you short circuit the process in a way by saying, look, just before the election, I'll give you 1,500 rupees, I'll give you 1,000 rupees, I'll make these cash transfers. And you and I could maybe see it, some would see it as a bribe to voters. Voters see it as their right now, and voters see it as a form of welfareism. I mean, if you're a woman in Amravati, I met this farmer's wife who the farmer had committed suicide, and for a loan of 1 lakh. Now, for her, even that 1,500 that she might get under the Ladki Bahin scheme in Maharashtra, or that she might get in a Maya scheme in Jharkhand, or Lokher Bhandar in Bengal, all makes a difference. So I think, this debate must be had, but it must be had recognizing the realities on the ground, and the fact that because politicians often cannot deliver on good governance, then they look at these schemes as short circuiting the process by providing direct welfare, and it's going to get more and more competitive. This competition for guarantees that you're offering are now going to get seemingly out of control in the years ahead.
Your book's title is 2024, The Election That Surprised India. Well, many were surprised by it, but according to you, for our viewers, if you could tell us the three main points that you think really surprised India as far as these elections are concerned.
In the run up to the election, just take your mind back to January, February of 2024, and there was this whole drumbeat around abki baar, paar. The election was seen as a done deal in a manner that I don't think in the last 35 years of covering elections I've ever seen. Even before the elections, most people reconciled or resigned to the fact that Mr. Modi was coming back with an even bigger majority. So I think the first thing that surprised is how did a party which everyone expected to get more than 400 seats as an alliance eventually end up at 240 as a party? That's a big difference between 400 and 240. So the numbers surprise. Number two, this entire euphoria was created, particularly after the Ram Mandir was built, that one nation, one religion, one leader. And even that, to some extent, even that bubble was pricked because, as I write in the book, India demonstrated a diversity dividend. And we are seeing that even now. The same BJP which sweeps Maharashtra has lost badly in Jharkhand. The same BJP which pulls off this big surprise in Haryana wasn't able to make any gains in Jammu and Kashmir. India is extremely diverse, and I think that's a point we forgot, and maybe that's why we got a bit surprised. And I think the other thing that surprised me was because there seemed such a lack of a level playing field, that despite that the opposition survived is an achievement in itself, some would argue. I mean, you have the major national parties' assets being frozen, bank accounts being frozen just a month before the election, income tax notices dating back to the 1990s being sent, leaders being arrested, put in jail, whether it's Kejriwal or Hemant Soren. And generally, the belief was that there is no level playing field, and I think the election commission, in particular, needs to be looked at. Needs to look at its own role in that context. But despite that, we still saw a relatively competitive election, and I think that also surprised people. And I think in the end, the surprise also was a pleasant surprise because it showed that electoral democracy is alive and well in this country, and elections are still very competitive.
Right. How did the Rahul Gandhi led Congress, manage to stage a comeback, if we could call it?
Neelam, that's a good question. What is the definition of a comeback? When you come up from, what did you get? 40 odd seats in 2014, 50 odd seats in 2019. Then you come to 99. It looks like a comeback.
Right.
I think it was more survival than revival. As we've seen both in Haryana and Maharashtra, I think the Congress party still has serious organizational deficiencies that show up from time to time. But I think let's be fair to Rahul Gandhi. In my first two books, 2014 and 19, I said he never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. This time, particularly post Bharat Jodo Yatra, or starting with the Bharat Jodo Yatra, Rahul Gandhi certainly showed the stomach and appetite for a fight. You can't deny him that. And at a time when most other Congress persons had given up on this election, Rahul Gandhi stood his course and to some extent was rewarded for the fact that you're out there, much more visible. So as I said, I don't think that. I think the mistake the Congress would be making is overreading the verdict of 2024, as we've now seen in Maharashtra and Haryana to some extent. But at the same time, let's not deny Rahul Gandhi for once the fact that at least he was out there ready to take on or take the battle to the BJP camp, which is what an opposition leader should do. The opposition leader has to stand his or her ground. And I think Rahul Gandhi, certainly post 2022, has shown from time to time the ability to do that. Now, I don't think that's enough. I think the big weakness in the Congress is organizational. And I think unless that is removed, just having a yatra is not going to be enough. The Congress needs to build certain organizational muscle, a sort of system in place which makes it more election battle ready. At the moment, when you compare the two, the BJP at times seems like a Ferrari at election times, and the Congress like a bit of an old Fiat. Now, that needs to change if the Congress has to recover some of its mojo. But certainly in the 2024 general elections, Rahul Gandhi was a leader whom people were looking at far more seriously than they did in previous elections.
Another thing that I found interesting was that you talk about the farmers' protest of 2021, and a particular incident where your tweet went viral, then it was deleted, and I'll just quote you: say, could a journalistic error of judgment in a crazed atmosphere be seen as evidence of seditious behavior? So, in that context, how do journalists navigate the rush of info? There's this onus of verifying it. There's information flowing from all corners. So how do you think we can navigate that?
That's a great question, and that's a question which I guess as a journalist who grew up in the pre-TV breaking news era has often been confronted with. All of this is new to me, even being on StreamYard now with you. It's all new. It's all real time. A lot of it is part of the digital age. Twitter came into my life in a way, 29 or 10. And I first saw it as an amusement. Now I realize people take it very seriously, what you tweet, how you tweet. And in a rapidly breaking news situation like a farmers' protest that turns violent on Republic Day, you listen to voices, you hear what they say live, it's going live on air, and you then tweet about that live response. Without doing, I think, taking a step back and verifying it, which we could do in the pre-breaking news era. I think it's a challenge. Look at what WhatsApp does, and there's a whole this WhatsApp university where fake information is sent out in real time, and I think there's a huge need for verification that we all need to do. In my instance, I've been now much more careful in when and how I tweet. But I think when you're in a live situation, it's very difficult at times to not get carried away by what you're seeing around yourself. I recall, covering the 1993 Mumbai blast, pre-television, pre-breaking news, and you could press the pause button and write your front page piece without worrying about, by having more time to process what had just happened. By contrast, when 2008 2611 happened, we just didn't have the time because everything was live, it was on air, there was this frenzied competition. And I think it's important to recognize as journalists that it's not important to be first, it's more important to get it right. I think that's the one distinction that all of us, myself included, need to make. I paid a price for what happened in 2021, but it wasn't seditious behavior. You see, where my problem was, you can certainly claim that I got my, I should have been stronger with my journalistic reporting, but you couldn't accuse me of sedition or suggesting I was acting against the state. And there I saw that in that sedition charges, which were made in a manner that it was clearly designed to target an individual, and sort of send out a chilling message that if you sort of fall out of line, we're watching and we'll file even sedition against you.
Your book also talks about two personalities, especially PM Modi and Rahul Gandhi. For our viewers, if you could tell us, how they are different or similar, and what do you have to say about that?
Look, they're chalk and cheese. There's very little similarity between Prime Minister Modi and Rahul Gandhi. Let me be fair to the Prime Minister first. He's been in public life for 50 years. That's a long time. I've been in journalism 35, and I'm already tiring. Modi seems untiring. He seems like the marathon man who never seems to tire. And he's gone through the entire process, the grind from being a pracharak, state secretary, general secretary, chief minister, prime minister. So he's got a variety of experiences in life. And I think that enables him to deal with success and failure quite remarkably. I mean, he understands how to deal with both success and failure because he's gone through both over the years. So I would say that's something that stands out for me, that Mr. Modi's just been around for so long and seems to be untiring and unflagging in his. I mean, he's very personality centric. It's all a lot about building this larger than life personality, but he is the marathon man. Rahul Gandhi, for a long time, and he's been in public life now for 20 years, appeared to flit in and out of public life. He would took a break. If you recall, during a budget session of Parliament, no one quite knew where he went. He would take on a particular agitation like Bhatta Parsol and then step back. Uh, I think some of that is changing, but I get a sense that Rahul Gandhi is still work in progress. He's still someone who needs to, while he's slowly but surely ideologically defining himself, and we can disagree with some of his ideological stances, but you have to give him credit that he sticks to his stand on certain issues. I just think that he still needs to be a much more practiced politician. Look, politics is 24 by 7. You can't switch off the lights at 6 p.m. and not be out there to meet your supporters. You've got to be far more communicative, constantly reaching out to them, flexible, willing to be extremely flexible. We think Mr. Modi is inflexible, but as we've seen even in the last few months, he's ready to do deals with people who in the past were seen as his sort of adversaries. Chandrababu Naidu, good example, Nitish Kumar. Rahul Gandhi needs to also, perhaps at times, show that political flexibility, even if he wants to be ideologically much more rigid. So I think there's a lot that maybe Mr. Gandhi can learn some aspects from Mr. Modi in terms of staying power. But they're two very distinct personalities. And I don't think, and let me just make this point, that I don't think it's just about them. The book certainly is much more than about two individuals, in fact, this time.
Definitely,
And
definitely.
and I think Indian politics is much more about two individuals. I think we get trapped in the binary of Congress versus BJP. So if the Congress is down, we think the opposition is finished. And the truth of the matter, as even 2024 has shown, look at Hemant Soren, bounce back. Look at Akhilesh Yadav, bounce back in Uttar Pradesh, Mamta Banerjee, Stalin. So there are lots of other opposition leaders as well. So I think Indian politics is much more diverse and a mosaic rather than reduce it eventually to Modi versus Rahul. And I think we have gone beyond that kind of presidential style contest simply because of the diversity dividend.
Yeah, I believe even Mahua Moitra had pointed out yesterday during the
Yes,
launch that it's no longer just about Congress or BJP. There are other, parties also.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
One concern that is being raised now, especially after the Maharashtra elections, is are we having free and fair elections? How do you see that as an issue, in not only, I mean, for India, but overall?
I think that's again a very important question because we look at universal adult franchise, one person, one vote, above the age of 18, and think that we've done our job. Everyone is free to contest, everyone is free to vote. The truth of the matter is, Indian elections have become increasingly a non-level playing field. In that sense, even if they are free, they seem to be unfair. And I think the main reason that I point out is not about EVMs. I think EVM, I believe if elections are unfree and unfair, it's not on counting day when EVMs are opened, and I have still no prima facie evidence to suggest that EVMs are manipulated. But what happens before? It's the run up to the election, the use of money power. In Maharashtra this time, I mean, you speak to any sarpanch in a Marathwada or Vidarbha, they will tell you the amounts of monies that some of them were given to distribute. I mean, unthinkable amounts. I had heard about this happening in Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh. This time it was happening in my home state of Maharashtra. I think money skews the entire process. It can invisibilize the opposition. You go from Mumbai to Nashik across the highway, you only see hoardings of the ruling party because obviously the ruling party has maybe 30, 40, 50x the monies or access to resources that perhaps a section of the opposition had. So that skews it. I think there is a there is a problem with voter lists that needs to be addressed. And I think some of these issues, unless they are addressed, there will be a sense that elections are not fully free and fair. I don't think EVMs is where the real issue lies. If anyone has hard proof, please provide the hard proof. Let's not go on sensationalism or what social media claims. But I think the real challenge of our times is to try somehow. I don't know what's the way forward, but electoral reforms are going to have to work towards trying to ensure that the role of money power is in some way minimized or equalized to ensure a truly level playing field.
You also talk about the emergence of digital media, which sort of played an important role in 2024 elections.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the most important changes that is taking place in India in the last 10 years. I mean, if you look at elections now, they're fought on a mobile phone near you. They're fought on WhatsApp near you. As I said, come from the 1989 first election when we were on a typewriter. We'd go back and whatever was reported would be reported in the next day's newspaper. Now it's all on a mobile phone or a digital platform. And that, in a way, also ensured diversity of opinion. Otherwise, given why large sections of the mainstream media sadly was simply not willing to question the government. And that's the case not just at election time, but through the year. Whoever is in government, and in whichever state, even in states, we find it that the mainstream media of a particular state is reluctant to question the government for reasons that they must answer. Are they revenue considerations or is it fear? But digital media and social media threw up far more opportunities for other voices to be heard, for other narratives to be amplified. And to that extent, I think digital media is playing a very important role in the democratization of the media process, and thank God for that.
In the book, one of the focal point of the book I felt was this abki baar 400 paar campaign. Why do you think it failed to resonate with the people?
As I said, one reason is what I keep calling the diversity dividend. Abki bar, 400 par sounds a very attractive, compelling slogan when you're sitting in Delhi or in a Noida newsroom. But there is an India well beyond that. It's not going to resonate with the same efficacy in a Tamil Nadu or a Kerala, where there are other political parties at play, other factors at play. So I think one reason, of course, is that is the limitations in a country which is as diverse as ours. BJP is India's party number one, no doubt about it. But is it hegemonical to the extent that it can simply make a slogan and across India people will go and vote for it? Not yet. Certainly, this is not the Congress Party in the pre 1975 era or the first 2 decades was almost hegemonical, but certainly not the BJP today. It is dominant in several parts of the country, but not overwhelmingly so in other parts. So I think maybe the BJP got carried away with the Ram Mandir euphoria, the euphoria of all that had happened in 2023, Chandrayaan and other G20. So this whole image of making it presidential was created where Mr. Modi was on the ticket across 543 constituencies. But different parts of India vote very differently. I mean, even as we see, even in state and general elections, people vote differently in the same area. I mean, that is unique to India. In the US, a Republican state will usually vote similarly for a presidential election and possibly for the Senate. In India, that also doesn't happen. So I think that sheer diversity meant that Charso Par didn't work. Plus, as I explained in the book, the opposition was able to use that to start its Samvidhan Khatre Mein Hai narrative. And the moment that Samvidhan Khatre Mein Hai narrative played out, it created fears and anxieties, particularly among Dalit groups who switched 5% switch away from the BJP. So I think the BJP made the mistake of believing that one nation, one leader will work across the country with the same efficacy and eventually paid a price for that kind of politics. I think Indian elections are way too complex to be narrowed down to one nation, one leader.
One of the chapters that I found interesting was हमारे साथ ED है, the washing machine politics, and we have witnessed that every election there will be defections. It has somehow become the norm.
You're quite right. There are ADR's report, I think, says more than 500 MPs and MLAs have defected between 2014 and 21. A majority of them to the BJP because the BJP is the party in power. You have wholesale defections like in Maharashtra, and you could have retail defections as you've had in some other parts of the country like Karnataka. So I think, you see, the problem at the moment is the enforcement directorate is a player in elections. The manner in which it has been used or misused, in the brazen manner it's been misused, does create misgivings because it means it's again not a level playing field. I mean, if it almost seems as if the ED only operates in opposition ruled states and doesn't operate in government ruled states. I mean, there was all this talk about how much money changed hands in Maharashtra when parties were broken. Was there any enforcement directorate out there? No. And there are cases that I give in the book of people who openly switched sides and admitted that they switched sides because of the fear of the ED. So I think the ED is a terrifying 12th man that the government has on its side, and it's therefore not 11 versus 11 in at election time, and that's another reason why elections are not fully free and fair. So I think the ED factor needs to be looked at, and the Supreme Court in particular has abandoned, I believe, its duty in that sense of ensuring that because no one else is going to do it, of reining in these central agencies, setting some rules for the manner in which you go ahead and arrest people. Now there are some restrictions put in on the otherwise very punitive bail provisions, but otherwise, I think the ED, मेरे पास ED है या हमारे पास ED है, is a very terrifying idea for democracy to function in India.
Well, as the Adani controversy has unfolded, I thought if you could talk a little about, another chapter where you talk about ye Adani ki sarkar hai, the making of the opposition alliance, the India alliance.
This Adani ki Sarkar is Rahul Gandhi's pet theme, and we are seeing it playing out in Parliament even as we speak. Look, I think again a lot of this, the fact that businessmen had a dominant rule in Indian politics has been known for even when the Congress was in power, they had their favored business houses. In the license permit Raj, there were favored business houses. It's just that it's all become now more open and brazen. And I think that in all of this, it's not as if the ED also, as we mentioned ED, you recall in the Congress time, CBI was called a cage parrot. Now Adani ki sarkar becomes the equivalent, in the license permit Raj, wo kehte the Tata Birla ke hai, sab. But now Adani ki sarkar is seen as a much more direct questioning of the cronyism to which our liberalization processes seems at times seems to sort of veer towards. 1991 changed India, I believe, mostly for the good. But from time to time, we've seen examples of the manner in which government processes can be manipulated to help a few. Now, Rahul Gandhi's problem is that Adani ki Sarkar may be a powerful slogan that you can make in parliament. Does it resonate on the ground? I'm not sure. Look at Maharashtra. You made all this hue and cry about the way Adani has taken over the Dharavi project. I don't think it really makes a difference to people living in rural Yavatmal or rural Bid. Their issues are different. So while Rahul Gandhi has every right to raise questions on cronyism, I think as a general, I mean, don't expect that to become a rallying call that is going to change electoral behavior. I think it needs to be looked at from the institutional point of view. Our institutions have weakened, and as a result, you have the kind of cronyism that takes place, the way in which tenders are allegedly manipulated. Again, it's not that this started only post 2014, it happened before. But I just think that there are serious question marks about the way in which specific individuals seem to disproportionately benefit at times from government discretionary powers. And therefore, Adani ki Sarkar may be Rahul Gandhi's slogan, but I think cronyism is something that we should all be concerned about. By all indications, Mr. Adani is a very good implementer of infrastructure projects. So there's no harm in him being in the sector. But the infrastructure sector itself involves so much of patronage from government that it needs to be looked at more carefully if we are to move to the next level.
Your book is about the 2024 Lok Sabha election. We just saw what happened in Maharashtra and Haryana, the way BJP performed even in Jammu. Do you think we were quick to sort of talk about the resurgence of the opposition?
Look, as I said, I think, and I say it even in my epilogue, it would be a misreading to see this election as the revival of the opposition, but more the survival. I think the survival of democracy, because there was a fear that if one party dominated India with 400 par, there would genuinely be a democratic recession, a further shrinking back of democratic institutions. To that extent, I think this was an important election to check this executive overreach that could end up in some kind of electoral authoritarianism that could end up converting our democracy into some kind of an electoral autocracy. I think from that point it was an important election. But did it mean that the opposition, there's a resurgence? No, of course not. And I'm very clear about that. I say it in the book as well. Mr. Modi is not going anywhere. This belief that, yeah, Modi, the problem is, I think the Congress got excited with 99 and thought they were actually getting 272, which they haven't. I think the regional parties were the ones which in some states propped up the Congress. Uttar Pradesh is a good example where the Samajwadi Party alliance worked. So look, I don't think, the Congress is anywhere close to a resurgence, far from it. But I think the opposition in general has shown from time to time an extreme ability to resist these pressures. These are the pressures that today being an opposition leader in India is there. Even in the media, if you're a I mean, if the media that questions, the media that dissents finds all kinds of pressures put on it. Think about what opposition leaders go through. I was speaking to Mr. Hemant Soren the other day, and he said even while the campaign was on, he was getting income tax notices, which he was having to deal with, and many of his MLAs were being either questioned or interrogated. It's not easy to be an opposition leader in India of 2024. And the book is not only about 2024, it's the build up, it's what I think democracy. So it's more about democracy and why I think that this result was important in checking some of the excesses the election verdict was important in checking some of the excesses that have crept into our democracy, particularly over the last decade.
Well, I know I've taken a lot of your time, but just last few questions. How has been the experience of observing the changing nature of elections from 1989 to 2024?
And I'm sure, Nilam, you know this. I remember you and I were chasing Priyanka Gandhi 5 years ago in the
Yes.
heat of Amethi, and we will continue to do that. I remember chasing VP Singh in 1989. He was far more accessible, is the only difference. Look, I think it's been, it's a joyful experience. I mean, elections gives you a chance of traveling on a chariot with NT Ramarao, and you almost feel that you're also being in some way feted as people are showering petals. It gives you a chance of going horseback with Fulan Devi, which I won't ever forget. So I think, it gives you a wide variety of experiences, the color, the joy of it. But I think over time, what's happened is that it's all become a little mechanical, technology driven, money driven. Some of the color has gone uh, out of the campaigns, but the money hasn't. And therefore, you sense the kind of deal making that now takes place afflicts our electoral democracy. So, is it as joyful as it was then? Yes and no. I mean, the joy is in people. I love to meet people across the board, and there is no other country in the world where people, despite all their difficulties, are still with a smile. They embrace you, they will open their hearts and their houses to you. I don't think that happens in any other country. And so long as that happens, it's joyful. I just think the quality of some of our electoral representatives at times and the manner in which they sort of interact now, there is I find some of it a little problematic, and so that's the slight downside that I see in our politics today.
One last question. A lot has been said about the role of media, the respect, the faith that people had in the institution. What do you think, media needs to do today to sort of, in a way, regain that?
I was wondering when you were going to ask that, because a lot of people, particularly journalists are turning to chapter 14 first and then reading the rest of the book, which is okay. Look, I'll tell you something interesting. When I was writing the book, I was wondering, should I write the chapter on the media or leave it maybe for a future book on the media? And then I said I would not be being fair to myself, since the book is looking at where our democracy, in a way, the challenges it faces at election time. You can't ignore the role of the media. I don't think, one of the areas I didn't look at was the role of the judiciary, because I don't know enough. And maybe that requires someone who's delves deep into the judiciary to look at how judicial decisions affect our democracy. But the media I'm part of it. So while I was writing about it, I was conscious that, look, you're writing about, in a way, yourself or your own industry. I think there is a huge problem in the way in which the media is structured in this country. The business of media is problematic because it makes you extremely vulnerable to government pressures, whoever is in power, whether it's at the state level or at the center. And then individual reporters, many of whom do their job with great idealism and strenuously, get tangled as a result, because they can't ask the questions or be as dissenting as they need to be. Look at Manipur. If this was any other part of the country, it would be a story that would get far greater attention than I believe it has got. Maybe because what I call the tyranny of distance afflicts Manipur. But I think the media in itself has to recognize its primary role. Its primary role is to tell truth to power, not become part of the power pyramid. And if we recognize that difference, I think we'll be okay. If we don't, I think we're going to get into further trouble, because then there's a credibility trap. People then don't sort of trust the media anymore, and at election time also, we then fail to play the role that we should, which is of ensuring a level playing field when it comes to communication, to asking questions. I think the media, again, much like I don't want to say the opposition should be restricted to BJP and Congress. Maybe the media also shouldn't just be restricted to some prime time television, which is more worrying than actually whether they are pro a party or anti another party. Is actually the way we spread hate. I think one of the things I write about, and one of the things that leaves me very, very disillusioned and angry, is the way consciously hate has been normalized in the news media. That is my bigger worry. Which party better? Every party over the years has tried, whether whoever has been in power has tried to use the media to their advantage. But when hate and when division is normalized, some of and I give examples of that in the book, the kind of, which eventually led to a railway constable killing people who looked Muslim in a train. And when he was asked why did he do it, he said, media bata raha tha, ye sab Pakistani hai. I mean, this is where there is a huge problem. And I think that needs to be addressed by the media. We need stronger rules in place, regulations in place. Not enough to have self regulation. You need a regulatory body which is independent of the government, which is able to read out the Riot Act to those in my profession who simply are not following the holy book that they should, which is the Constitution of India.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Sardesai, for this interesting book and this insightful discussion. I'm sure more and more people will read it. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you very much to you and the entire team of The Print. Continue to do good work. Thank you.